What's up guys, it's Makai Typhoon here, and today we're going to be going through a bunch of FNCS tips and tricks that you can do to first off prepare for the FNCS and also for the actual day of the FNCS, so you can be as prepared and perform as well in the tournament as you possibly can. Just before we start the video, I just wanted to say that I'm really thankful for everyone who's watched my last few videos. Thank you for coming along, for liking the videos, for commenting, for subscribing. I really appreciate it. I'd really appreciate any new people that have come along to this video. Just click the subscribe button down below, and if you enjoy the content, then click the like button. And with that said, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so this video is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to show you lots of different clips and creative maps and ways to improve. In this video, I'm just going to play some footage in the background, and then I'm just going to talk through a bunch of different tips on how you can perform on the day in the FNCS. So the first tip that I've got for you is to make sure that you eat well on the day of the FNCS. So make sure you wake up, you have breakfast, make sure it's a light breakfast and a light lunch. And if you get hungry throughout the day, make sure you're having a healthy snack, something like an apple, a banana, and just make sure that you're eating well but not too much. You don't want to have a huge meal, but you want to make sure you're eating light while still making sure that you're getting enough nutrients and enough food in your diet. I mean, esports is kind of like any sport really. It's not quite as physically demanding as other sports, but it still has the mental aspect, and by eating well, you're putting yourself in the best frame of mind. You're not thinking about anything else. You don't want to be going through the tournament and thinking, I'm really hungry, I need to eat, I need to get food. You want to make sure that your mind is literally just focused on trying to perform at the actual tournament itself and have no distractions at all. And that's why you need to make sure you eat well first and foremost. Okay, the next thing is quite an obvious thing, but you must get a very good night's sleep the night before. We're talking your average amount, 8 to 9 hours. You don't want to sleep too much, because if you sleep too much, you become really groggy. At the same time, you certainly don't want to sleep too little, because if you sleep too little, you haven't had enough sleep. Your mind's not going to be engaged enough when it actually comes to the tournament, and you're just not going to play well. That's just factually in any single sport that you try and do without any sleep. You will not play well if you haven't had a good night's sleep the night before. So this is probably the most important tip. Make sure you get 8 to 9 hours, wake up, fresh mind, ready to do the tournament. So once you've got all the outside factors and the prep for the day, you've eaten well, you've got a good night's sleep, and now you're actually ready to start playing the game. The first thing you've got to do is you have to warm up effectively. And this is not too long, not too little. You don't want to be out there playing like 4 hours before the tournament, and by the time the tournament comes, you're just absolutely burnt out by playing so much Fortnite. I mean, you can play 2 hours, have a break, and maybe play another 2 hours if you really have to play 4 hours on the day. But in my opinion, the kind of optimal warm-up time would be around 1 to 2 hours, just getting creative, maybe play a few arena matches, and just make sure that you're at least warmed up, so by the time you get to that first game, you're going to perform. Because in the FNCS, the first game is the most important game, because that's where you score the most of your points, and then you move on to the later games where you're in higher relay lobbies, and it's a little bit more difficult to actually score those points. Okay, so the next tip is something that people seem to always forget, and that is that this game is supposed to be fun. So treat the FNCS as fun. Don't treat it as a job, don't treat it with any pressure. Just play the FNCS like you would when you were playing pubs 2 years ago with your mates. Just jump on, try and enjoy yourself, and if you enjoy yourself, you'll keep the right mindset, and the likelihood is you'll probably play as good as you can possibly play. So that's one of the most important things. Keep a good mindset by treating it as a fun game, not a job. So the next thing that you can do is something you will need to do before the FNCS, and it's just something you can do in the next couple of days just to prepare, and that is to VOD review pros who have previously placed in tournaments. So you basically just look through their qualifying rounds, see what they did well, see the way they approached it. Did they W key? Did they play placement? How did they win the fights? What fights did they take? Just anything you can watch. Just do this. You don't have to do this for very long. I just watch a few select pros, maybe people who won the FNCS last time, like Mongrel, Nitro, Tayson, just to get some tips from people who have actually done well in the past, and just to give you a little bit of confidence going into it that you know exactly what you need to do to qualify out of the first round. So the next thing is, again, something that you probably want to do before the FNCS, and that's make sure that you have teammates you actually work with and have chemistry with. Don't go into this FNCS just with your mates that you don't actually play that well with, but you just play with them because they're your mates. You need to make sure you're going in there with someone that you actually have chemistry with and someone that you're actually going to perform with, because there's many FNCS weeks. So even if you're worried about having a lack of prep time for this FNCS, It might just be good practice this week in the view that you might be able to then qualify another week. So just make sure that you've actually found the right teammates and you're not going into this unprepared. Okay, so this tip is more about what you actually do in fights, and this is something that, again, you should be practicing before when you play things like Arena and like 3v3 box fights and the ways that you just train. And that's, you must play together. This is the number one tip for a game mode like Trios, is that you have to be playing together. It's not a solo game mode, so don't run off. Make sure you don't split as a team, especially when you're in fights. Stay in the same box, build up together, because if you build up on your own, you'll just get outnumbered 3-on-1, and you don't want to get outnumbered in fights, because no matter how good you are, if there is 3 people spraying you or 3 people trying to take your wall, they're probably going to eliminate you. So just make sure that you're always playing with your teammates. It kind of ties in with the having chemistry with your teammates. You just have to play together always in trios. So the next tip is something that you need to consider based on the current meta, and that is having a dedicated IGL whose primary job is to consider and call out rotates. It's so important in the current meta because there's a lack of mobility, especially since Epic removed shockwaves. So you've got to have a good IGL who's going to choose the safest rotates in difficult situations. The primary job of an IGL is basically just to get you through to the end game and also get you past the end game safely. So make sure that you have an IGL who will pick the right fights. He won't take you into fights that you're going to lose or take you into fights where you're going to get scuffed for the end game. You need to have someone who's smart, who knows about the game, and who's going to make the right decisions when they're under pressure. Having a good IGL this season in this FNCS is so important. I guarantee the people who win the FNCS will have probably one of the best IGLs around, if not the best. Now, if you don't know what an IGL is, it basically stands for in-game leader, and it's basically the person who kind of controls what you do as a trio. They'll call out your rotates, they'll tell you what fights to take. Usually they'll be the people who have all the hard mats, and the other 2 people are usually fraggers. Now that can vary from trio to trio, but that's kind of the way that seems to work the best. So an IGL is just the guy who basically leads. It's what it says, in-game leader. He leads, he takes you through the game whilst you kind of just get on with the fun stuff, which is eliminating others. Okay, so this tip focuses a little bit on what we've previously spoke about in terms of the chemistry and the IGL, but one of the most important things, especially when playing team games and even more so on trios, is communication. You need to make sure you use your voices when you're playing in the FNCS. The worst thing you can do in team mode is not speak, and that goes for literally anything in your game, whether you need mats, ammo, shield, health, or are being pushed and need help. You just need to tell your teammates constantly what you're up to, what other teams are up to, what you need, what they need, and you just need to keep on talking to help each other through the game, because like I said with the point about not being alone, you have to work together in a team game mode. You cannot put everything on yourself or one of your teammates. No one can get carried in a trios. You have to do it together. And a little extra tip when it comes to communication: when you get someone boxed, make sure you're shouting out "full boxed" or "I've boxed this person." Make sure your teammates know that you've boxed someone, so that way you can then get your whole team on that person in the box and that person has no chance. It effectively means when you box someone, there is no way you're not getting that elimination, and there's also very little chance they'll even hit you for any sort of damage. The next thing you have to remember about the FNCS is that it's very placement heavy, so only take mid-game fights if you really need the loot. There's absolutely no point in scuffing your own game for the sake of 2 or 3 points from eliminating a trio midway, when there is so many more points up for grabs in the late game, especially if you're being smart and you can score those quick eliminations at the end. Just don't take silly fights, don't scuff your own game, because you don't want to get to the end game and then suddenly you absolutely desperately need to get a refresh and get minis and get heals, when you could just have not taken that mid-game fight and just saved all your fighting till the end and tried to score the placement points as well as the eliminations. And the final tip I want to give on the FNCS is that consistency is key. Don't try and just get that one pop-off game that you're going to qualify from. Why not just have 5 or 6 really good games? Just be consistent. Don't W key constantly in the hope that you might get that 1 or 2 really high point game, because what's the point in risking it just on the sake of getting 1 or 2 games? Play as well as you can on a consistent basis, you'll score the most points and you'll potentially qualify into the latter rounds of the FNCS. And that's it for the video, guys. If you did make it this far, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you haven't already, then please make sure you click the subscribe button down below. Please leave a like on the video. That really helps me out for the YouTube algorithm and gets this video out to more people, so more people can learn how they can improve and get better for the FNCS. Stay tuned for many more Fortnite tips and tricks videos, which will be out soon. I'm planning on uploading at least twice a week, so make sure you subscribe for all of those, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.